If you're young and visiting the UK, or you're a student planning to study in the UK, one of the things that you might want to experience is our nightclubs. There are plenty of pubs and bars where alcohol is served, but nightclubs are the places that are open later and which also have dance floors. You can dance. There may even be a DJ. Nightclubs or clubs, C-L-U-B, are open till quite late at night or even early morning, you might say. But rather like the crisis that Britain is facing with pubs, where lots of pubs close every week, the same seems to be happening to our nightclubs too. Where is our nightlife going? In this podcast episode, which is mainly for your English language learning, you'll get language for socializing, going out, some practice at statistics, and I'll make sure we use some really good idioms along the way. Well, nightclubs have been around since the 1960s. They're in all the big cities of the world, of course, and many cities are famous for their nightlife, both in the UK and in lots of other countries too. And nightclubs were certainly around and popular when I was young enough to go to them, and especially when I was a student. Even after the age of 30, I would sometimes go out with my work friends, dancing on a Thursday night, because it was fun. No longer, I'm afraid. My days of clubbing are over. But nightclubs have been operating for a long time. And for my generation, going to a nightclub was a rite of passage. There's a phrase. A rite of passage, that's R-I-T-E. It's an event that marks an important change in your life, like moving from being a child to an adult. Suddenly being able to go to pubs and nightclubs when you turned 18, that was important. It proved you were grown up, and it was how you met people and went out and enjoyed yourself. If you're younger than me, when you were younger, you may have been to raves and enjoyed rave music. That's R-A-V-E. And that's where dance events were held in huge venues, huge places, like factories that were no longer used. Sometimes thousands of people would gather together at a rave, dancing under a light show until the sun came up. Never my thing, but you may be familiar with that. But over a third, 33% of these places, rave venues, have closed since the pandemic, since 2020. So today we're asking a big question. Have the British forgotten how to party? Sometimes what we're famous for in a negative way. And yes, to party can be used as a verb. Or is it just possible that we are finding other ways to enjoy ourselves? And the theme of our nightclubs closing, this has been picked up by lots of writers online. There are articles like The End of Hedonism and Why Britain Turned Its Back on Clubbing. Both of those were published on the BBC News website. And that's a word to learn, hedonism. That's H-E-D-O-N-I-S-M. Hedonism is a bit of a philosophical word. It means living for pleasure. Imagine a person who only enjoys the moment, drinking, dancing, not worrying about tomorrow. That's hedonism. And for a long time, the UK was well known for it. There were even clubs called hedonism. Other BBC articles focus slightly differently with titles like, Are Sports Clubs Replacing Nightclubs for Socialising? So instead of going out drinking and dancing to meet new people, today socialising means turning up to run or do sport. That's the more popular way to meet people. So one article quotes a man called Liam O'Shea, who owned Hope Works, a rave venue in Sheffield. Sheffield is a big city in the north of England. Speaking in March 2025, Liam O'Shea warned that nightclubs are dropping like flies. There's an idiom for you. Dropping like flies implies that things are falling down, failing, or dying in large numbers and very quickly. It's not a nice image, is it? A lot of dead flies, but that is something we say, dropping like flies. And the statistics agree. In the last 5 years, Britain has lost around 400 nightclubs, more than a third of them. So it's definitely happening. Nightclubs are closing all around the UK. But what are the reasons for this change? Why is it happening? Before I come to that, if you're enjoying this podcast episode, don't forget to subscribe to Adept English. That really helps us grow. We don't advertise. We're a tiny company. So we only keep going because people subscribe or like our podcast. Or even better, if you're on Spotify, please share an episode. And wherever you are, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is, either give us a review or make a comment. That really helps. Lots of you commented on last week's podcast about crisps. So it's a good way of supporting Adept English and it doesn't cost you anything. But if you're keen to take your English language learning further, if you subscribe on our website to Adept English, you can get an extra 8 episodes every month. Imagine that. So back to our topic. Why are nightclubs closing? Well, money is one reason. If you bought a drink in a UK city recently, you might have noticed how expensive it is. And going clubbing is much more expensive than the cost of a night in the pub. Nightclubs don't really get going until quite late at night. There's an entry fee. You pay on the door or you book an advance. The drinks are more expensive than they are in a pub. And in places like London, you may need to book a booth, that's BOOTH, a set of seats, so that you've got somewhere to put your drinks and to sit down. You might enjoy yourself for a few hours in the nightclub, and then you're probably going to need a taxi home. By the time the clubs close, there aren't any buses, and people are often feeling quite hungry after a night in a club. So that late night kebab or takeaway also adds to the cost. That's kebab, Kebab. So a night out at a nightclub can get pretty expensive, and people who are young enough to do it probably can't afford to do it very often. But there are other reasons why nightclubbing is less popular. If you look at the people who typically go clubbing, it's 18 to 30-year-olds, or Gen Z as they're known. Young adults, in other words. I realise I comment regularly on Gen Z. They're an interesting generation and things are very different for young people today. And my children are Gen Z. Me, I'm a Gen Xer. So it seems that young people today are less interested in sticky floors, expensive tickets, and feeling terrible the next day because they've drunk alcohol. That's a hangover, in other words. That's HANGOVER. One of the BBC News articles, psychologist Elizabeth Fagin, says that Gen Z are more aware of their health, both physical and mental, of the mind, in other words. She says we are seeing less of a drinking culture. That's probably a good thing. And more statistics, a YouGov survey, that's of 18 to 24-year-olds, shows that 39% of them don't drink alcohol at all. And it's a well-known fact. While the pub may still be fun if you're not drinking, there are pub sports, live bands. You can eat there and have a conversation. But nightclubs, not so much fun when you're not drinking. And there are other factors like the pandemic. People got out of the habit of going clubbing, and the pandemic made it difficult for the nightclubs to survive. So if Gen Z aren't in the nightclub or the pub in the evening, where are they? Well, human beings do like to socialise, and that really is what pubs and nightclubs are about. So it turns out Gen Z, young people, are just meeting differently in different places. One of the BBC articles talks to the members of a running club in Cheltenham. That's a town in Gloucestershire. One of the people interviewed there said, "I think sport is the new social drink. So instead of meeting at 10 o'clock at night to drink alcohol and dance, young people may meet at 9 o'clock in the morning to run 5 kilometres together. That's about 3 miles. and then have a cup of coffee. People join running clubs because they want a wholesome life. That's wholesome. WHOLESOME. If something is wholesome, it's good for your body and your mind. So a running club or some other kind of sports club is clean and positive. I'm not sure we can describe nightclubs and the things that go on there as wholesome. But running in a park on a Saturday morning with friends, that's pretty wholesome. So while going to a nightclub might give you excitement and energy and the feeling of belonging to a crowd, running has extra benefits like positive brain chemicals. It makes you socialize, but it's also much cheaper. You don't have a headache the next day. And actually, it's good for your health. And young people, the 18 to 30s, are much more likely to choose different activities for their entertainment and their socializing. Leisure and social activities that people take part in outside the home might be things like darts, pool, football, tennis, ten-pin bowling, crazy golf, table tennis or ping pong, team-based mental or physical challenges, go-karting, paddleboarding, or curling. Even things like ballparks and escape rooms. They're popular too. So these are the activities that Gen Z are more likely to spend their money on and stay alcohol-free. Gen Z come in for a lot of criticism, but I think what they're choosing here is actually more constructive. Better. Much as I may have enjoyed going to nightclubs and pubs when I was younger, I think my generation, Gen X, probably drink too much alcohol and their health suffers as a consequence. So if Gen Z are making healthier choices, good luck to them. That's a good thing. And if you are thinking of coming to the UK and you fancy sampling some nightclubs, there are still plenty of them left, don't worry. Whatever you're doing this weekend, whether you're going out clubbing or going to do a park run, have a great time. And don't forget to listen to this episode a number of times so that your English can benefit.